You're welcome to First Take. My name is Jifa Bampo. Our guest today is the MP for Peru East, former minister in charge of power. His name is Dr. Kwabena Donkor. Many of us also know him for his work in the energy space. He has issued a statement to Parliament on various issues relating to the regulatory setup of some of our quasi-government institutions. Why is he so concerned about that? We'll be finding out. Thank you for joining us on First Take. Good day to you, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, and many thanks for joining us on First Take.
Thank you.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm surviving by His grace.
But MPs are doing well.
Doing well?
Yes.
I think we are an endangered species.
Really?
Yes.
Why? Because of the near-split parliament, hung parliament environment, and the, fisticuffs that we are seeing these days?
Yes, that and more. When you are an MP, especially those from deprived communities, almost every burden is on you. And when there is hardship, people have no option other than to come to you when they face challenges. And in rural communities, there isn't much of an education on the role of the MP. And so the pressure is even more in rural communities.
And that is why you feel MPs are an endangered species?
Yes. If we are not careful, a time will come when we will not find qualified and competent people putting themselves up for elective offices.
Because it's too expensive to be an MP?
It is expensive, it is unappreciated, but more importantly, the first rule of an MP is to legislate.
To make
no
laws.
matter how well you do in the chamber, that seems not to reflect in your constituency. It is not about your prime responsibility.
So ultimately, this is an issue that has to be resolved. Any thoughts about how to make it easier on MPs? Because there are many who also think you're living your best life.
For some, probably yes. For others, no. For most professionals who come to Parliament, you end up with a loss of revenue. You are not paid as well as you can earn outside. I mean, I'm not scared, or I'm not afraid to state on television that my take-home pay is 10,700. I spend 2,000 cedis on transport, on fuel, in and out to get to my constituency on a single round trip. So if you go to your constituency twice in a month, how much is left of your salary?
I know governance experts have suggested that there must be some funding that supports constituencies. It may not necessarily be the MP's fund, but funding that supports the constituencies. Would that be a way to ease the pressure on members of Parliament, aside from what the assemblies would do?
At a point, yes, it will. But when you also juxtapose that with the absence of, for example, health facilities in the communities, basic health facilities, then you're going to ask which is the priority: setting up constituency offices for MPs or providing CHIPS compounds for the community. At our current state of development, that is one of the challenges we have to face.
Your thoughts about how both sides, the majority side and the minority side, have worked together, knowing that it's a near-split parliament? Some have called it a hung parliament.
I believe we have missed an opportunity. One of the challenges we've had as a nation is the winner-take-all mentality. And therefore, the good people of Ghana provided us with an opportunity to work together, to learn to build consensus, to learn to engage at every stage. Unfortunately, we seem not to be making use of that opportunity. It's a golden opportunity for the body politic, especially the political class, to learn to work together. We are blowing that opportunity. And if you don't take an opportunity when it's given, it becomes a threat.
When you say that the political class is blowing the opportunity, isn't it the case that maybe the negotiators are more interested in securing the interest of their parties as opposed to the interest of Ghanaians?
The interest of the parties ought to be the interest of the nation state. The parties emerge in order to contribute to the development of the nation state, to the Ghanaian polity. And therefore, there should not be any discord between the interests of the party and the interests of the nation state. It is not just about the negotiators. I believe the leadership of government, the executive arm, should have taken the opportunity to take the first step. They are in government. The people elected a president who is Nana Akufo-Addo. He formed his government. And when you form a government in a hung parliament, you have a responsibility to reach out to the other side. Look, if you take the manifestos of the two major parties, probably 70 to 80% are common. So what unites us far exceeds what divides us. So having had this hung parliament, the first question the government ought to do is how do we build national consensus? Unfortunately, I believe the leadership of the majority side in parliament has mentally not transitioned from the 7th parliament, where they had 169 members against 106 by the NDC.
Where they could easily push out the government's
Precisely.
agenda or any other issue.
Yeah, they have not transitioned mentally from the 7th parliament to the 8th parliament, where the reality is different. This whole business of the E-levy could have been handled prior to the budget. Do we have it? If we have to have it, why must we have it? What are the checks? Are we making use of existing revenue flows? Are we optimizing existing revenue flows? Are we using current revenue flows efficiently? And if the answers to all this is yes, and assuming without admitting that we need a new layer, how do we go about it?
Now, in reference to the E-levy, do you think we'll reach an agreement soon?
Well, our position...
That's the minority side's position?
Yes, our position as a minority is that we don't want it.
Okay, so you remain totally against it. It should not be part of the 2022 budget.
That is our position. It is up to the government side to convince us and to convince the Ghanaian people why we must have it.
Okay. Now, I've heard members of the majority side and government say that we potentially will lose more than 5 billion if we don't have the E-levy approved. So what's the alternative for plugging that financial gap and narrowing the revenue and expenditure gap?
If you look at the Auditor General's report, the Auditor General says we lose up to 12 billion. If it's over a 4-year period, that gives us
3 billion annually.
3 billion annually. That is just one aspect. If you take the petroleum downstream sector, as we speak, oil marketing companies owe GRA close to 1 billion cedis. That is another loophole. How efficiently do we even use current resources? And how efficiently do we collect what is already on the statute books? We get up in a peak of power, in a peak of having the authority to do so. We say, look, from today going forward, no road tolls. It may not be much. We may only be bringing in 38 million currently. But that is a gross understatement. Are we effectively, have we put in measures to improve collection, even of road tolls? I sincerely believe with the right measures, using IT and other tools now available, we could easily be doing 100 million plus a year.
Okay. So your view is that when we look at how much we lose annually from the Auditor General's report, the monies owed government, for instance, by OMCs for liftings, and then inefficient collection of taxes revenue like road tolls and others, these are revenue streams that could make up for the E-levy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But we've had governments in place in this Fourth Republic. Why haven't we seen an improvement in these collection options?
There have been an improvement. If you look at our collection revenue as a percentage of GDP, it wasn't this percentage in 1993.
It wasn't the 13%.
Yeah, in 1993. GDP. There's been some slight improvement, but more so today, technology presents us better opportunities. Opportunities which were not in place in 1993 with the digital economy.
So if we don't do E-levy, we should ensure that we improve collections using technology and the like. But there's been criticism also from your side about who provides these technology services to improve collection. I remember there was a whole hula baloo about Kelly GVG contract and the communication services tax. Many are asking what those monies have been used for and all that. How can politicians convince Ghanaians, the political or state actors convince Ghanaians that truly the collection will be done in a manner that is fair, that does not make other people rich and many of Ghanaians poorer?
I believe it's a very, very valid observation. How do we contract such firms? And do we have to contract private sector actors to collect revenue? For example,
so do we have to contract
we
people?
We don't necessarily have to. What stops us from improving GRE? What stops us from improving the work of regulatory bodies? The National Communications Authority in the telecom space. The authority should be in a position to ensure that whatever is due to the state from the telecoms subsector is paid. It's IT in today's technological world. So if we strengthen our state actors, if we strengthen regulatory bodies, they should be able to contribute far more to revenue collection. And that will cut out the need for such actors. I am yet to see a demonstration of the economic benefit of having a private sector contractor validate payments from the telecom sector.
So what I seek to find out now is, how can we get that answer, that demonstration that a private entity will collect this fairly? But how can we also be sure that the state entity like the GRA and the other government agencies will collect as well? Because of the accusations that sometimes they don't keep proper records, sometimes they neglect to actually do the collection. There might be gaps in timelines of collection. How can we have confidence in state institutions to do this work as opposed to a private person?
Well, if we can't have confidence in a state institution, then the question is even worse. How do we have confidence in a private institution? As a people, we need to grow. As a country, we need to take advantage of technology to improve our governance structure. We must also insist on appointing qualified, competent, and committed people to head some of these institutions. And that is where I have a challenge. How do we appoint the leadership of some of these state institutions? Is it just by political patronage? I have no problem with an MPP person being appointed to head a state institution, provided he or she is qualified and competent. Because somebody has to take a decision. But in taking the decision, are we putting our best foot forward? Is patronage taking over competency? If we have to weigh patronage versus competency, what are we looking at? So if the Ghanaian state or if a government appoints somebody who lacks the competence to head an institution, is it that throughout that whole, the party, the governing party, they don't have competent people?
Our guest is Dr. Kwabena Donkor. He's the MP for Pru East. He's a former Minister of State in charge of power, and he's a founding member of the Petroleum Commission. So we'll get down to talking a bit more about the upstream sector of oil, the downstream sector as well, because he issued a statement in Parliament about improving regulation for some of these entities. We'll be right back after this break. We're back with our guest, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, MP for Pru East. Now, away from issues relating to the E-levy, there's been a lot of fuel politics that has engaged the country as well over the last month. First, your thoughts about the demands of the transport operators for a reduction in the price of fuel, specifically removal of some of the taxes that make up the petroleum price build-up.
It's a difficult one. But in hard times, difficult decisions have to be taken.
Which is which? It's a difficult one to remove the taxes?
No, it's a difficult situation to find ourselves in as a nation state. I can see where the government stands. But in difficult times, something has to give. And I sincerely think if we were more efficient, even in the administration of the price regime, we could secure benefits for consumers. If you take MPA, for example, if you look at their cost build-up, there's fuel tracking, there's electronic sealing, there is fuel marking. There are about 5 charges that go invariably into the price build-up. They have an enterprise resource management software. So if we look at the price build-up, the cost structure, can we realign some of these cost elements? For example, there's some 5 pesos for fuel marking. Is that really necessary?
Explain what the fuel marking is for the uninitiated.
It is a charge.
Is that a charge that is imposed so that they can color the fuel, so that we know the differences?
Well, broadly speaking, just that. Yeah. Broadly speaking.
So that we know that
so that it becomes difficult to adulterate kerosene with gas oil, gasoline, which we call petrol, with diesel, etc.
But it's important to do that. So it's the 5 peso charge,
yes.
Wrong?
Okay, it is not the only tool we are using. Today we are using electronic seals. When the BRV, bulk road vehicle, which we call the tanker, when it goes to load, there's an electronic seal that is supposed to prevent tampering. And that is, again, similar to what the fuel marking is supposed to do. Then there is also now a charge at the filling station where automatically MPA will have some control over products in tanks, underground tanks. There are about 5 of them. Yes, and these sub-products came in over a period of time. What we have failed to do Yes, we started with fuel marking. Yes, we started with tracking. Yes, today we have the enterprise resource management software. But we have added this over time.
So your concern is that
Let's remove some of them.
over a 20-year period, for instance, we've kept adding on, and instead of reducing or changing or amending. And so for you, because of that, fuel prices remain higher than they should in the sub-region.
Yes, I'm just using that as an example. If we had today, if it's the electronic sealing that we think it will work, then we don't need the fuel marking.
So we should make up our mind which we want and just pay for that.
And by paying for that, we'll save cost. And that saving can go back to the consumer. That is one. Two, depending on which time frame, between 30 to 42% of the cost of fuel is made up of margins, levies, and taxes. In times of difficulty, can we take a second look at some of these taxes, levies, and margins in times of difficulty? And I believe we can take a second look. And then the savings that will arise from that should also go to the consumer.
Okay. Now, I need to ask, though, there's some of the levies that have been there for a long time. Then there's the Petroleum Stabilization Levy, for instance. Many are asking how much has been collected and why can't it be used to stabilize prices?
If you ask for the stabilization levy, the proceeds of the levy, have they been set aside? No. It's gone into the same consolidated fund. And therefore, in times of difficulty, there's no money sitting anywhere. We have raised the issue on the floor of Parliament. We've raised the issue at the committee. But the fact is that that money has not been set aside. Unlike the heritage and then the stabilization funds in the upstream sector.
So we need something similar like that for the downstream sector. Would that require amendment of legislation or a new LI?
There's even a fundamental question. Do we need that? If we do, yes, how do we structure that? We've had it and it's been ill-structured. But again, we should also be conscious of the fact that the cumulative effect of our governance, of our economic management, also impacts on petroleum pricing. Petroleum pricing is dollar denominated on the international market. Anytime there's disequilibrium between the cedi and the dollar, prices will have to go up. So if we manage our economy well, if we manage the domestic economy well, they will have stability in currency. And therefore, there will not be the need for the cedi depreciation to be reflected at the forecourt.
Or at the pumps, and then the demand that the stabilization proceeds be used to push. So let me ask, the position of the drivers now is that the recent reduction was inadequate. First, GOIL had reduced by 15p or 15 pesos. Is that an interference in the deregulation regime, which is what the OMCs are now accusing GOIL of doing?
GOIL is not a state-owned company. Let's be very clear about it. GOIL is listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. And the state, the Ghanaian state, is a minority shareholder. The Ghanaian state is a minority shareholder. And if we are to grow indigenous companies on the stock exchange, the last thing we should be seen to be doing is to be interfering with the commercial operations of the company. If GOIL takes a commercial decision that by reducing prices by, let's say, 5 pesos, I can increase my market share, then the overall effect of reducing price at the fuel station can even result in greater profit for them, fine, I don't have a problem with that. But it should not be taken at any other level other than the commercial level.
You mentioned the structure, the shareholding structure, that government is a minority shareholder. Can government in any way appeal and intervene and ask GOIL to do this in the interest of Mother Ghana?
Well, depending on how solid the board is, depending on how solid management is, management must have the guts to say, no, this is a commercial decision, let us take a commercial decision. If they don't have the guts, then they will succumb to any pressure, and government pressure will just be one of the pressures.
Is it curious that as GOIL is accused by the OMCs of interfering in the deregulation process, GOIL, in announcing that this was a decision they took on their own, also announced that they've temporarily suspended their membership of the Association of Oil Marketing Companies, and it's something that happened immediately because of that accusation. Isn't that curious to you?
It is, and I believe it's a wrong move by GOIL. We have over 120 oil marketing companies. Yes, GOIL is the market leader, and GOIL should be more sensitive. If we can't accept criticism, then it's a dangerous thing. GOIL should be commercially proactive. Commercially proactive in that when there is the need to adjust pricing, you take a commercial decision. If you look at, let me just bring October of this 2021, GOIL accounted for 17% of the national lifting of gasoline, which we call petrol.
Are they the highest?
They are the highest, 17%. And therefore, what they do also has an effect on the market. Are they squeezing margins to squeeze others out? If it's a marketing strategy, fine. However, are they doing that to please political masters? If that is the decision, then they are being unfair to shareholders, and they are destroying the Ghana Stock Exchange. The advantage of listing was to take the company out of state control so that it will be governed by the rules of the stock exchange, which are far more commercially sensitive than as a state-owned enterprise. So currently, GOIL is not a state-owned enterprise. The state has interest in GOIL, but it's not a state-owned enterprise.
And cannot be
and cannot and should not be
not.
directing.
Okay.
If it happened, it's most unfortunate.
Will we ever see an end to the pricing politics when it comes to fuel? The deregulation process was meant to do that, and the concern is that we see prices going up, but we hardly see them come down. And there have been instances where they've come down, they've gone up, but many wonder.
You see, we are caught in a dilemma. First of all, you need a strong regulator when you deregulate. The regulator protects the public good. That is fundamental to deregulation. You need a strong regulator when you deregulate. When you have a weak regulator, deregulation will not be successful. That is one. The second challenge is that the product is essentially quoted in dollars, the importation. We have no control over the international market price. That we have to accept. But we have control over our CD, the relationship of our CD to the dollar. If we so run our economy poorly, to the extent that it is reflected. Our current vice president famously said the exchange rate will expose you. So if the exchange rate, the cedi is deteriorating against major currencies, it exposes our poor management of our economy. And that will always reflect in higher pricing. So that even when they have to reduce prices, when international benchmarks come down, because of the deterioration of the cedi-dollar relationship, the quantum will be minimal. So, because one leg wouldn't have reduced. If we stabilize the cedi, it will have a very positive impact on pricing.
You're watching First Take. I'm Jifa Bampo. Our guest is Dr. Kwabena Donkor. We take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're welcome back to First Take. Our guest is Dr. Kwabena Donkor, the MP for Pru East. Now, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, you talked about a strong regulator, and you indicated that when you deregulate, you need a strong regulator to protect the public good. You put out a statement in Parliament referencing some of our state institutions, like the National Petroleum Authority, the Ghana Standards Authority, the Ghana Maritime Authority, the Minerals Commission. And a lot of the things you talked about relate to improving regulation, relate to accountability and effective monitoring and delivering on what is expected of them. Why has this become an issue for you?
If you look at governance infrastructure, regulatory bodies play a major role. Unfortunately, in our country, politicians have taken credit for things they should not be taking credit for. And therefore, they take the blame for things they should not be taking the blame for. For example, one of the major challenges we have is the quantum of fake or substandard drugs in the country.
I thought that had significantly improved. The FDA had gone on a major campaign, particularly in the first 10 years post-2000, to rid the country of fake drugs.
Talk to any pharmacist. They are even scared of the quantum of substandard drugs.
Okay, but that's different from fake drugs. There's substandard drugs and there's fake drugs. Maybe we have more of substandard, which is those that are not at the efficacious level.
Well, if it's fake, it's not efficacious. If it's substandard, it is not. So let me put both in the same bracket. And then we also have unregistered drugs. The law does not permit that. What do we have? We have this situation. There's still a lot of market surveillance to be conducted by the Food and Drugs Authority. There's still a lot of market surveillance to be done by Ghana Standards Authority. But it is not just the market surveillance. The market surveillance will only point, it's only a pointer. The enforcement, they are clothed with sufficient powers to stamp this out. If you take the National Petroleum Authority, for example, from their own enterprise software, they've discovered that non-existent filling stations on their system.
So you have data that proves that there are lots of fake fuel stations in the MPA system?
Let me give you a good example. If you take the month of October, a company called Oval Energy accounted for 8% of all the national lifting of petrol and diesel. Let me use the term that we know. If you go to their own database,
and this is the MPA's
this
database.
All this information is coming from MPA. This company has less than 10 filling stations in the country.
How many filling stations specifically do they have?
Specifically, as at October, they have 4.
Okay, so they lift 8% of oil or crude petroleum products.
Yes.
They have 4 filling stations. That's inadequate to distribute that 8%?
Absolutely. Look,
maybe it's not just those 4
yes,
filling stations. Maybe they are off-taking for others.
Yes, there is. That is what we call third party in the business. MP has banned third party liftings. MP has banned third party liftings. And therefore, look, the filling station that sells most in Ghana is the airport Shell filling station. It is. And yet, that filling station on the average cannot do 600,000 liters a month. So if you have 4 or 5 filling stations and you are accounting for 8% of the total national lifting, and there is definitely something wrong. The 8% translates into gasoline, petrol, 13.4 million liters.
Which is almost, 6 times what you say the filling station at airport sells.
And then also translates into 15.5 million liters of gas oil. It is impossible.
So you know of these figures. Have you put this before the National Petroleum Authority?
Oh, absolutely. I've raised a number of questions. As you said, I read a statement on the floor of Parliament. And let me say, the new leadership of MPA has started to address some of these concerns, but it's not fast enough. Effect on the broader Ghanaian society is what worries me. First of all, there's a loss of revenue to the state. A single company owes GRA 83 million cedis. This is not corporate tax. This
is an OMC.
OMC. This is money collected at the filling station on behalf of the state and that they failed to pay.
So if an OMC is owing that to the GRA and GRA has failed to collect, it also raises questions about the capability of the GRA, because if you have that huge amount of money out there, it begs the question, why haven't you picked it?
GRA itself, as I stated in one of my key interventions, that GRA has gone to sleep like Nkuto. Shea butter oil. It's going to sleep like shea butter oil. So GRA itself is complicit. You are assigned a duty. You are paid well by the Ghanaian state. And if you fail to deliver, you have to be fired.
But is that fair to say that the GRA has gone to sleep on it? There might be other mitigating circumstances that mean that this company is not meeting its obligations. Some companies may have spent the money.
You give them 20. So why should they be licensed? In the licensing regime by MPA, what are the guarantees? In any case, the GRA should be demanding from such defaulting companies bank guarantees. Look, what vexes the issue more is that this same MPA will register 3 OMCs, 2 OMCs to the same sponsor. So they run debts on one OMC. And I want MPA to come out to challenge this if they want to. They run debts on one OMC and they switch to the other. If you consider that companies, well-known companies with filling stations all across the country, Puma, Zen, Pacific, Frames, Allied, are doing 2-3%. And a company with less than 10 stations is doing 8-9%. There is something absolutely wrong. The system is rotten.
So in terms of the MPA, you feel that there are some regulatory failures there?
Major regulatory failures. Major, not just some. And you see, the impact is one, the Ghanaian state is losing
money.
Losing
the other
revenue.
Impact is?
And the other impact is those companies that are doing legitimate business suffer. And so we don't have indigenous companies growing. those doing legitimate business. Look, it costs today between $1.5 million and $1 million to put up a service station in Accra, in any good location in Accra. And if you are not doing 300,000-400,000 liters a month, the return on investment will be negative. So we are crippling the growth of the Ghanaian sector. I am a champion of the Ghanaian sector, indigenous sector, because nobody can grow this country for us except Ghanaians. But Ghanaian companies must play by the rules. And that is why you need a strong regulator when you deregulate.
Okay. Now,
let me just add this. Okay. A country such as India, with a population of 1.2 billion, has less than 10 oil marketing companies. In Ghana, we have in excess of 120.
Isn't that just also a phenomenon of Ghana's liberal economic ethos? Because if you look at the banking sector, we had a very huge banking sector until the recent banking collapse some 4 years ago. We have a huge insurance sector. Even the media, for instance, look at the extent of liberalism because of the numbers you have of radio, TV, online, digital. I mean, isn't it just a Ghanaian thing? We like to be liberal. We spread things very thin. And in the end, it's only the fittest who survive. Isn't that rather a fault of the state? The state must put or cap things. So the telcos, I guess now it's obvious that if you are not operating at a certain level, you can't do business as a telco in Ghana.
And the state is represented by the regulator. The regulator licenses. The regulator enforces. The regulator regulates. And that is why you have hit the nail on the head. That is why regulatory failure is so major. That is why the Ghanaian state must take regulation and regulatory bodies far more seriously than they have done.
Or the regulators themselves need to do a better job.
Well, if they won't, we must force them.
Now, another area I'm interested in, which I know many would be, is the Minerals Commission. We've been fighting a war against Galamsey for the better part of, 4 years. Just recently, the Deputy Minister for Lands and Natural Resources gave an update indicating that some 260 and more equipment, excavators, chamfines had been burnt in the first phase of Operation Halt. Some 26 people are being prosecuted for their role in illegal mining. They are moving into the second phase of Operation Halt. Many have blamed the illegal mining crisis on politicians or, strong individuals who are funding these activities. I've not heard many criticize the Minerals Commission. If anything, I've heard many just say that they seem handicapped in stopping the menace because of strong political backing, maybe.
That is absolutely untrue. The Minerals Commission is that body clothed with powers by the Ghanaian state. How did this small-scale mining get out of hand? First of all, the small-scale mining was introduced as a policy by the Minerals Commission. They issued small-scale licenses. Did they police the licenses? No. Did they educate people coming for these licenses sufficiently? No. And therefore, they cannot escape blame. You see, the first qualification for a regulator is the ability to say no. No to power, no to authority. It's not just if you cannot tell the politician that this is against the law and therefore it will not pass, you are not qualified to be a regulator.
But aren't you also being very simplistic? We've all been in this country where some strict regulators lose their jobs over taking a position.
I would prefer losing my job. I have been a regulator before. I've been a quasi-regulator, I've been a regulator. I've been there. I've been there. You must have the guts.
But do they really have the numbers? Because I've watched a number of documentaries put together on the illegal mining crisis, and it seems that local assemblies, traditional authorities, seem more complicit in having the illegal mining thrive as opposed to the rules put forward by the regulator.
Who allows them? Who allows them? Who allows them? It's the Minerals Commission. You see, when they stay close to you with powers, you cannot, even if you delegate your powers, you are still responsible. The fact that you have delegated your powers to somebody else does not absolve you from blame. The Minerals Commission is a good example of a regulatory body that has failed the Ghanaian people. It's a good example. The Minerals Commission is such a good example of regulatory failure.
How can we claw back? The government, or let me rephrase, the government has put in place measures, it says, to deal with the illegal mining menace. It's seeking to prosecute individuals, as it mentioned, and also destroy any equipment used to operate in water bodies. Is this enough? You've seen what's been done over the last
It's not
years.
enough. We allow the genie out of the bottle, and now we are chasing it.
Okay, but that also sounds harsh. We still need to fix it
of
because
course,
the rivers, Pra and Ankobra.
It's not just Pra and Ankobra. Virtually all water bodies are being polluted, and the economic and health consequences of the pollution. Today, one of the reasons Ghana companies broke is the cost of treatment of water. It's gone way above board because of the contamination of water bodies, their source. And therefore, as a people, we look, I believe 50 to 60% of all our governance challenge will be resolved if our regulatory bodies were working and working well. They are the institutions charged with protecting the public good, protecting our health. Half of the fires, if the records are there, Ghana Fire Service, if you go, they will tell you, half of the fires we've had emanate from poor quality accessories. There is a fire. But Ghana Standards Authority is expected to certify every cable produced in Ghana or imported into Ghana. Do we do that? We don't.
So you want to see the regulatory institutions do
Take
better?
the front line and let politicians take the back seat.
Politicians love to be in the limelight, sir.
Well, the law does not allow them. The law does not allow them. Yours is to shape policy. A minister is not an implementer. Yours is to develop policy. The regulatory agency, the agency tasked with, clothed with power, let those agencies work. And let me say this on record. Any regulator who says, I was asked to do this, it's not worth being a regulator. Demands will always be made on you. Requests will be made. But you have to determine whether it makes sense and whether it is in the national interest. If it's not in the national interest, I've worked in my short life with at least 4 presidents. I worked with the late President Rawlings, may he so rest in peace. I worked with President Atamels, who was my political father. I worked with President Mahama. Look, there's no president that who will say do this, and then you go to him and say, Your Excellency, these are the implications, these are the negative implications, and it's against the law, that he will say, go ahead. They will not. Too often, we are so excited to be called. And so we want to please political actors who may not even have the knowledge that we have, the technical knowledge. And so even when they ask us to jump, we don't even ask how high. Regulation is a craft. And you must have what it takes to be a regulator. If you don't have what it takes, please go for go to another field.
So I know that you were a founding member of the Petroleum Commission, and the Petroleum Commission, I know, had become quite strong in trying to monitor the upstream petroleum sector. A lot of work has been done, but now we have a number of oil companies operating. Is the PC doing as well as you envisioned it to do?
The PC is doing well, but it could still do better.
In what areas?
Far better. In enforcement. And governments must also allow the PC to work.
Enforce what?
Enforce the acts, enforce the laws, enforce the regulations. Let me give you an example. When Greater Jubilee was being developed, just by a decision of Petroleum Commission, they saved Ghana over $1 billion. When they brought up the plan of development, Petroleum Commission questioned the plan of development, went through the costing, and they were able to reduce it by about $1 billion. That is just one. So if and when regulatory bodies work well, they save the country a lot of money. Because whatever cost you allow goes against cost oil, goes against the cost of producing. And it's taken up front, it's taken up first before you get your own revenue stream.
I've heard some criticisms about the deal we signed in reference to, our oil, and that we're not getting enough for it.
Which of the deals?
Well, so for the foundation deal with for Jubilee.
Yes.
For instance. So there's the concern that we're not getting enough, which is why the recent attempt by the GMPC to acquire additional stake and the like, and that has been also criticized as being overpriced. How can we be sure, how can we get skin in the game without spending all our money? Because the oil business is also a risky one.
Let's be fair. When you go into anything for the first time, you don't expect to have the leverage to get the best of pricing. In Chi, they will say, Bejimimre, there is a price you pay for learning. So the foundational, yes, the earlier contracts, yes.
But they are that's the field that is producing the most for us.
Yes, but the subsequent ones we have to improve. And I'm very happy GMPC went in, the Anadako interest, purchased 7% more. So by another route, we are increasing our equity participation, and therefore we will get a lot more revenue. At the start, you will be cheated. First of all, it's a frontier. You need to break into the frontier. And you can do it at the optimal price or benefit, fine. But post that, and that was why we took strong exception to the Ake deal when Ake took over the HES and the AGM interest. That was why we took a strong, that we were retrogressing instead of progressing. Yes, and the regulator was sidelined to the extent that Parliament, the 7th Parliament, allowed an amendment that sidelined Petroleum Commission. We shouted our voices hoarse, but the 4th estate of the realm did not also even understand us, let alone push the national agenda. So, yes, PC can do more, and it ought to be doing more.
What areas of would you like to see? Because with a little knowledge that I have of the sector, many talk about local content being a disappointment, that they're not seeing enough Ghanaians in that space. But is it just about local content, or it's about the entire value chain?
It's about the entire value chain. First of all, are we employing enough people in the critical skilled areas? Reservoir engineering.
Are we training and
even employing?
But they must be, if we want Ghanaians to be in there, obviously they have to train.
You see, yes, but we have a lot of skilled people in the Ghanaian diaspora.
Yes.
Are we insisting that look, for these positions they must be Ghanaians. One, that is one. Two, in the production process, are we insisting on efficiency and the best technology cost-wise? That is an area we have to improve on. And then, of course, local content. Are we using local content as a tool of political patronage? Or we are building and developing an indigenous Ghanaian sector? One of the unfortunate things is that even with a change of regime, political regime, change of players, it results in a change of players at the upstream sector.
So there isn't a consistency that can grow
precisely,
the environment.
Our political patronage undermines the growth of our own local content.
All right. Final question, Dr. Kwabena Donkor. You've been an MP for quite a bit.
Only 9 years.
How much longer are you hoping to go? I'm not sucking you.
No. Well, I believe there are young techs in the queue, even in my constituency. My prayer is that my party comes to power and then I can retire and go into consultancy, go back into academia to teach, and also go into farming.
You're interested in farming?
Absolutely. As we sit, I've acquired 2 square miles of 2 miles square of land in the Abasi traditional area. I've acquired 1 mile square in the Atebu traditional area.
What are you seeking to farm?
I want to retire onto a farm, both cash crops and the perennials, cereals. I want to go into
maize and the like.
Yes, and a bit of animal rearing, and also eat fresh and get away from the stress of Accra.
So it means when that time comes, you will leave us.
Absolutely. I'll still be in Ghana, and I will enjoy
up country.
One of the people I've admired most is Mr. Century. He used to be the chief conservator of forestry, and he became the chief director of the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology. He's also he's been a best farmer for Ghana here, and he's my idol.
And that's
with all the qualifications,
that's an envision you have.
Yes, you also set an example to the youth that farming is not for people who have failed in life. That farming can be commercial, farming can be professional, and farming can be progressive. Food security is the #1 desire of any nation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Kwabena Donkor. I didn't know you were such a man of many parts. Apart from energy, you're also interested in farming. So great. Look forward to that.
The pleasure is me. I've also been an academic.
Yes, yes, of course. Anyone with a PhD is a teacher at heart. Thank you very much, sir.
The pleasure is mine, ma'am.
And you've been watching First Take with me, Jifa Bampo. Our guest has been Dr. Kwabena Donkor. He is the MP for Pru East, former Minister of State. He's been telling us a bit about the energy sector, the upstream oil and gas sector, and of course, what the future may look like for him. Thanks for joining us. Till next time.